join Iryna in welcoming you to our webinar today. And well, I'm just going to provide a brief introduction and then turn it over to the experts. So let me share my screen for a short presentation. Hoping you can see my screen now.
Yes.
Great. So thanks again for joining us. My name is Kathleen Shearer, and I'm the Executive Director of COAR, which is the Confederation of Open Access Repositories. And we are an international association with members and partners from around the world. And you can see on the map where our members and partners are. But really, we try to work on behalf of the entire repository community. And essentially, we work in a number of areas. One is to advocate for repositories. We develop good practices. We define future functionalities and advance global interoperability for repositories worldwide. And I think our vision really is one of that was articulated very well by a neurobiologist who gave a keynote presentation at our annual meeting. We often hear about researchers wanting to publish in, what do researchers want? They want to publish in prestige journals. But I think with the advent of open science, what researchers will increasingly want and need is a system of interoperable digital research objects on top, using which they can conduct their research. So Bjorn Brems talked about, an ecosystem that's filled with a variety of different research outputs, data, code, articles, peer reviews, and so on. And having researchers being able to have access to, research outputs immediately, publications that are not 18 months old, but are preprints and immediately available. And they can really, conduct their research in a kind of a leading edge way based on this foundation of interoperable research objects. And so this is fundamental sort of model for our vision at COAR. And actually, if you look at the current ecosystem for repositories, we don't know exactly how many repositories there are because there are various directories that have different numbers and contain different types of repositories, but we think that there are at least 6,000 open access repositories around the world, and we see these repositories as being fundamental infrastructure for open science moving forward. But key to this is that these repositories are not individual services siloed and not interconnected with each other. Really, to achieve the vision, we need to have interoperability across all those thousands of repositories. And this is a very, very challenging aspect of trying to build the repository ecosystem. So we see this global knowledge commons, or what Bjorn Brems called this interconnected dynamic research objects, as being very important. But critical to that is ensuring that repositories adopt a set of common standards and interoperable behaviors. So, of course, we have only 150 or 160 members, mainly universities or government agencies that are part of COAR. But again, we really try to build this ecosystem where all repositories are included. And so to do that, we really try to work at the national and regional level with various stakeholders to try to advance our vision and our good practices. And so here are the different stakeholders that we're working with. And today we are gathering together as part of the Asia OA community, which is a community of practice that we host at COAR. And we launched Asia OA in 2016. So that's already almost 8 years ago, 7 years ago, with a meeting in Japan. And it's really, again, to provide a very lightweight mechanism for Asian institutions who are interested in open access to be able to meet together every year or 2 years and to meet also online together and discuss issues of importance. And so I just would like to give you a notice that our next in-person meeting will be in India, and we're hoping that the dates will be April 17th and 18th in New Delhi, but we will keep you informed about when that's confirmed, when those dates are confirmed. And so today we really have 2 topics for the webinar. One is the COAR Community Framework for Good Practices and Repositories that was published in July 2022. And the second is a very recently published set of recommendations around how to support non-English and multilingual content in repositories. And so we will start with a discussion about the COAR Community Framework for Good Practices and Repositories. And I'll just give you a bit of background. This framework was developed by an international working group, and the idea really is to provide a general number of criteria and characteristics for good practices and repositories that are agnostic in terms of the type of repository that you're using. So you may have articles or data or other types of content in your repository. You may be a domain repository or an institutional repository, but all of these criteria in the framework should be relevant for you. And again, the idea really is to help improve practices at local repositories around the world. And so we started out with a version 1 that we published in October 2020, which brought together a number of different criteria in other types of guidelines and frameworks that were reviewed by the working group. And then we revised that based on significant community consultation in 2022 for version 2. And I think we have been discussing in early days of discussion that we will probably hope to have a version 3 for 2024, which will be a little bit more clearer and easier to understand for repository managers, because we realize some of the criteria now are kind of not always easy to adopt directly into the repository. So the framework has 52 criteria, and those criteria are organized into 8 different categories: discovery, access, reuse, integrity and authenticity, quality assurance, preservation, sustainability and governance, and then some other criteria. And I'll just give you a brief example of what the framework looks like. It has essential characteristics, which we think every repository should try to adopt immediately, and then desired characteristics, which are characteristics that we see becoming important in the future, but maybe are not necessary to implement right now. So I'm not going to take you through each of the 52 criteria, but you've seen a link, and we can put a link in the chat so you can look at them directly. And I also would like to mention that the framework has been translated into a number of different languages, and they're available on the COAR website. And we also welcome you, if you're interested, to please go ahead and translate them into your specific language. And we'd be happy also to link to that from the COAR website. And so with that, I'd like to thank you very much again for joining us. And I will turn it over to Masashi, who is going to introduce to you a toolkit that they've developed in Japan to be able to use the framework to help repositories in Japan assess their adoption of the criteria. So with that note, I'll stop sharing my screen and turn it over to you, Masashi. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Kathleen. So, Iryna, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you well.
So hi, I'm Masashi from National Institute of Informatics. So let me start my presentation titled Framework Version 1 Survey Outcomes in Japan and System Development. So I will talk about these two topics briefly. First topic is COAR Community Framework Version 1 Survey Outcomes in Japan. And the current framework is version 2, so version 1 is older version. And the second topic is system development for the framework. So let me talk about topic 1. This figure is overview of the survey in Japan. JPCOR, which is Japanese largest IR community, was interested in the macro trends in IR operations. So we distributed the framework version 1 based survey to our 700 members. Then we received 200 responses out of 700. We usually receive about 500 responses when we conduct this kind of survey. But some of the questions in the framework were a little bit difficult to answer. So I think that's why we could only receive 200 responses. And after we received responses, we sent feedback to 200 respondents. After we finished the survey, we analyzed them to understand the macro trends in IR operations. And we found institutions with many contents tend to score better, which is shown in figure on the left. We also found institutions with many contents tend to score better, especially in discoverability section and the reuse section, which is shown in figure on the right. But we are still not sure if operations affect the number of contents or the number of contents affect operations. So we need more close analysis, such as interview, to understand these trends. But anyways, we could find some interesting trends by using the framework. Institutions can also get some findings by answering the survey. We made 200 charts for respondent. So each institution receive one chart made from its response as feedback. A blue part is institution score, and black part is average score. So institutions can find good points and bad points of its IR operation by comparing its own score to the average score on the chart. So let me move to next topic. After we finished the survey, we started
recording in progress.
After we finished the survey, we started developing a system that could automate tasks related to feedback. It was because programming and distribution of charts were time-consuming, and issuance of certificate badges, which we couldn't do this time, is also time-consuming. The certificate badge here is like the COAR Trust Shield. So we thought certificate badges important because if they can show their operation is good, they will be more motivated to answer. So this system automatically creates and sends a chat as feedback. And if your score is good, it issues a certificate badge that can be placed on a web page. This is a page you will see after you submit the survey on the system. You will see scores of each section on the right side. And on the left side, you will see chart and certificate badge and HTML code for the badge. This badge works just like the COAR Trust Shield. So if you click on the badge, you can jump to the certificate page where score is displayed. So if you are interested in the badge, please take the survey. And this is the end of my presentation. And I am sure Suni will show you how to take the survey. And thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you very much, Masashi. Let me try to share the URL for the self-assessment toolkit with you. Let me just see whether I can put it here. Okay. Feel free to continue. Feel free to try by using the link here. So it'll be helpful if you can also take a look at the questions while we take you through the toolkit. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Suni from NTU. Very happy to be here to walk through the questions in the toolkit with you. Let me try to share with you my screen so that we can take a look at the toolkit together. Okay, sorry, just let me bring my screen over. And okay, so let me just try to show you how it looks like on the repository. Let me just okay, so I'm going to share with you how it looks like on the DRNTU, which is the Nanyang Technological University repository. And this is where we have embedded the badge. So what we did is the university library, we tried the self-assessment framework, And we went through the toolkit, we answered the questions, and I would like to thank my colleagues who are taking care of the NTU repository. They are Iryna, David, Jaya, and team. So thanks very much to the team for trying it out. And they have successfully completed the self-assessment, and well done. So they got the badge, they embedded here. And if you click on the badge, it brings them to the score here. So this is what Masashi had shared with you earlier. So that is for our paper repository. If I could also share with you the data repository, which Iryna and her team also tried. So they also successfully got the COAR badge for the data repository for the research data. Okay, so we have a separate repository for research data, and with the badge, if you click on the badge, you can see the scoring here as well. So this is how it works. Okay, let me bring you to the toolkit itself. Let me see if I can go to this. Okay. Okay, so this is the self-assessment framework. And if you come here, you would be able to see that it gives you a background introduction. So thanks very much to NII, National Institute of Informatics in Japan, which started doing this. So as you have heard from Masashi, they started with a survey at the national level. I think that's a very good way to cascade down what we can learn from the international best practice. So what Kathleen shared is at the international best practice level, and then you can see how Japan has translated into the national level, and then we had a very good opportunity to work with NII Japan JP COAR to come up with this self-assessment framework. So we would like to share with you how you can make use of this. One of the frequently asked questions is whether you can do this more than once. So the answer is yes. So you can try to answer the question. You will be able to get a score. You can you will receive an email, and then you can get a copy of your score, and then you can see which are the areas that you would like to prioritize to work on in time to come, so that you know, you can use this as a guide. Yeah, as what Kathleen shared, there is a plan to make the questions easier to understand as well. So please do give us your feedback. In the intro, there are also links to the two repositories which I've just shared with you. So feel free to click on them. Okay, let me just quickly take you through the self-assessment toolkit. I've got this screen here that I've filled up. So the first page is asking for the name of your repository. So I'm just giving it a name, demo, and ROR ID. ROR stands for Research Organization Registry. So ROR ID is a persistent identifier for research organizations. This question is not compulsory, but it'll be great if you can look it up to check what is your ROR. And let me see. So what I did was I went through, I think I could have opened too many screens. Okay, no worries. Okay, so you can click on the link in the survey, in the toolkit here, to look up your own ROR. So if you click on the link, it brings you here. So I'm looking up for my own university, Nanyang Technological University, and then I got my ROR. Okay, so it is not a compulsory question. If you don't have one, then just leave it blank. URL of your repository. So that's pretty straightforward. The software, So when we fill this up, we will fill up for one repository at a time because we have two repositories. So we have to fill up once for DSpace, the one for research papers, and then fill up again for the second repository, the one for research data. Okay, so the one for research data will be this Dataverse. So the one for papers is DSpace. Location in which your repository is based, then your name, your email, and can we contact you after this? Okay, so click on next section, and then that will bring you to this discovery section. So as you have heard from Kathleen, there are like 52 characteristics. Oh my, there's just so many. I'm not sure whether we will have the time to cover all of them. I will perhaps spend a little bit more time on the essential characteristics. All right, so the first section is on discovery. Let's take a look at the essential questions. So the essential questions are marked as essential, and they are given a score of 1. Okay, so let me just share with you a little bit here. So when you answer yes, it gives you a score of 1. If you answer no, it's 0 mark. If you answer I don't know, it's 0 mark. So that's how the scoring is done. Okay, so sorry, Masashi, is that correct?
Yes, it's correct.
Okay, yeah. So thanks a lot, Masashi. Masashi is the one who's building all this, so I have to ask him. Okay, so thanks, Masashi, for confirming that. So take note that there are essential questions, and if we scroll down, there are desired questions. All right, so only the essential questions are scored. So don't worry too much about the desired. But let me just try to take you through this. So for discovery, the first essential question is asking about whether the repository enables users to apply basic Dublin Core metadata to its records, as well as more granular elements. Okay, so this is really a long list here, but just focus on the basic metadata, the Dublin Core metadata. So if you're using DSpace or Dataverse, it's not an issue because all these are built in. So in case you are wondering how it looks like, let me just take you through this screen. Again, I'm using the DRNTU example. So if you look at the simple record, it shows you the label here like this. But if you click on the full item record, you can see the DC metadata fields here. All right, so this is the Dublin Core metadata that is built in most of the well-established repository platforms. Okay, so I could answer a yes here. The repository supports harvesting of metadata using OAI PMH. Is essential. So, well, this one you could, if you're using the well-established data, if you're using the well-established platform softwares like DSpace or Dataverse, it is already taken care of. I think maybe it's just to check with your IT colleagues whether it's turned on. So let me just share with you a little bit about how that looks like in our Dataverse environment. So back to the Dataverse environment, I thought I'd like to share with you what it means to have OAI PMH in action. So if you look at our data repository, we have harvested. So if you look at the metadata source here, let me just zoom in a little bit. You can see that it's harvested. So it is possible because it is tapping on the OAI PMH. So this data set, or rather the metadata, does not reside in the NTU Dataverse, but rather on a separate data repository. So it's harvested. And this OAI PMH supports that. Okay, so it is for repository interoperability. It allows metadata harvesting so that it can show up on another repository. it helps with boosting the discoverability. So if you have that, you can click yes. And in cases where the resource has been withdrawn, the repository provides a tombstone page, and the metadata record remains publicly available. Sometimes this is needed because it could be due to it was accidentally resubmitted, and then there's a need because it's been published for some time, so there is a DOI and I could have been indexed, and it's useful to be able to do that. So let me just share with you an example. I must thank Yu, my colleague, for sharing with me some of these very good examples. So let me just share it on my screen. I hope you can see this. So yeah, so this is a tombstone page in the Dataverse environment. It's called deaccessioned. Okay, deaccessioned. Yeah, so that is what it is about. Repository provides a tombstone page. The repository assigns persistent identifiers, PIDs, that point to the landing page of the resource is essential. Yeah, PIDs is like, wow, it's just so necessary. Oh, sorry for the thunder. Can you hear the thunder in my background? Okay, so in the explanation here, 1.4 PID examples, handle, DOI, yeah, are both very good examples of persistent IDs. Let me just run through this example again. So in the NTU record, there is this URI. So that is the handle that's automatically generated by the repository. So, and then of course the published paper DOI. So yes, okay, so the handle is generated by repository. So I put a yes, 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 okay. A search facility, yes, can you search for your records? So of course, if there is a search box, whether it's basic or advanced, is necessary, is essential. 1.6, the metadata in the repository are indexed by external academic discovery services and aggregators. So in Google Scholar, for example, in Google dataset search, so maybe you might already know about Google Scholar, but in Google dataset search, let me just show you Google dataset search. And if we were to just look for a dataset, let me see. Sometimes it may take a while, so it's better that I show you something that has been indexed, has been published for some time. So this is the Google dataset search. So you can find the dataset in Google. So it points to our DRNTU data, okay? So of course, that Google Scholar or Google dataset search are not the only places, but there are so many other external academic discovery services and aggregators like Dimensions, Lens, OpenAir. Yeah, so whether your published data, published metadata can be found there. So I could put a yes here. Number 1.7 is essential as well. The repository is included in one or more disciplinary or general registry of repositories. So if I click on RE3, RE3 is specific for research data repositories. So if I just check to see whether our repository is there, okay, so yeah, we are there. So it's good to perhaps have a discussion to see whether you would like to get your repository indexed in the registries, such as RE3 for data repositories, or this one, the open door for your paper repository. So you see, when I type DRNTU, you can see that it pops up. Okay, it's good to be indexed in registries like this because they do have some kind of acceptance criteria, and it it's very helpful to have your country's repository show up in these registries. So I could put a yes here. Metadata in the repository are available in human readable and machine readable formats. So yes, so what you can see on the interface is human readable, but you can also have them available in other formats. Okay, so if you like to check your own repository, you can check. Let me just see, for example, DRNT. Oh, sorry for thunder. There's a thunderstorm in my place. Okay, so yeah, so this is about the exportable data set, right? So whether it allows you to download the records. Let me just show you. Sorry. The metadata. So let me just maybe just pull up one record and we can take a look here. Yeah, so you can export the record in these various formats. All right, CSV, Excel, etc. Yeah. Okay, so we are good with that question. And okay, where am I? Okay. At this point of time, does anyone want to jump in to say something? Kathleen or Iryna or Masashi?
No, thanks. And there are no questions in the chat yet. And colleagues, if you have questions, please write them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and
okay.
Question.
Okay. Sorry for the jumping in and out of the screen. I hope you can see the screen now. Okay, so we were at 1.8. So yeah, 1.9 onwards is desired. Okay, so the repository facilitates linking in the metadata record between related content such as preprints, published articles, data, and software. So we do have some examples here. Let me see if I can pull this up. Let me just close some of these screens. I have quite a number of screens that I need to close. Okay. Yeah. So let me see. Okay, let me try to share with you the screen. And the question here, 1.9, is about linking across. So we do have this record that links to, oh, this is, maybe I should pull out another one. So sorry about that. Metadata and, okay, I found it. Yeah. So this one, this is a dataset record, okay, from this electrical engineering professor, and there is this related publication metadata. So I'm zooming in to related publication, and you can see the link to the publisher's paper, as well as a link to the DRNTU paper in the institutional repository. So if you click on that, it brings you to the paper here. All right, so and let me see. Okay, so this is the peer-reviewed version. All right, so what we have just done is to look at one example where there is cross-linking between the paper, the data set, and the peer-reviewed accepted version. Okay, so yes. Okay, the repository supports PIDs for authors, funders, institutions, funding programs, and grants, and other relevant entities. As long as you answer yes to any of them, you will get a score of 1. Okay, so perhaps yes to some of them. So PID for author, let me just give you an example to see. Let me see whether I have an example where I can show you about the PID for the authors funders. Okay, so we could have the author for the author. We could have for example, the funding agencies, they could have their grant information, but the ROR is a separate one that's a bit different from the grant info. Yeah, so so I believe most of us is yes to just some of them. Okay, so yeah, there is the 1.10 is desired. And then the 1.11, which is the Creative Commons license. So in the Dataverse, we have this license data use agreement, CC BY-NC, because that's the default license that is set by us. And the data repository is in the DRNTU. We have also a dc.rights metadata field that says a little bit about the Creative Commons license if it's, for example, an open access paper. Okay, so that's desired. 1.12, in the case of research data, the repository supports identifiers for data at multiple levels of granularity where appropriate. For example, if there is research using a subset of the full data set and the citation of the data subset is needed. Okay, so that is where in a data repository environment, you could have for example, at the file level, you might have slightly an extension of that. So of this, this is a little bit different. It's a little bit more in addition to the data set. Okay, so it tells you a little bit that this is for the figure 1. And yeah. Okay. So the data citation could be there for the dataset level as well as at the more granular level. 1.13 is when you could be using control vocabularies like Library of Congress subject headings or medical subject headings or your own repository's taxonomy. So for our repository, we do have some kind of for the paper repository, we do have some kind of taxonomy. Like for this one, you can see that this keywords here is actually following some kind of taxonomy here. So you can see that here in the dc.subject. Okay, so again, this is desired. So you can put no, I don't know, it doesn't quite matter because it's desired, it's not scored. The metadata in the repository is available for download. Yes, we saw that just now. Okay, so you can move on to the next section like this. Okay, access. The resources in the repository are available at no cost to the user. This is an essential characteristics. Whether, you know, do you charge? Yeah. So yes, for our repository at no cost. 2.2, the landing page for each repository, for each resource in the repository includes a link to the resource. So if you can see the link, yes, there is a link to the resource itself, and likewise for Dataverse. And yes, 2.3, the repository supports access through its documentation and metadata for persons with disabilities. So let us take a look at this University of St. Andrews, where they have an accessibility statement. So they have a page here, if you have a page that addresses how that articulates how your repository is addressing accessibility needs, like the ability to allow users to set their browser settings, etc., zoom in up to 200%, etc. You could answer yes to this question. Okay. So another example is University of Vienna. They have published a document here on guidelines on preparing accessible content for repositories. All right. So if you have some documentation on how you support that, you could answer yes. Otherwise, it's a no or I don't know. So this is essential for now, 2.3. 2.4, in cases where the repository is collecting sensitive research data, there are mechanisms that allow data owners to limit access to authorized users only. So let me see whether I can find an example. For this data set, the files are locked up, potentially sensitive. So yeah, whether your repository allows this locking up, and does it say about allows data owners to limit access to authorized users only? So whether you would like to take control of whether people can request for access, okay? So locking up, request access, or get people to fill up some forms. Okay, so whether your repository allows that, so it's essential for now. 2.4, the repository supports a responsive and mobile-friendly user interface. I don't know. If you don't know, you can put that, I don't know. Desired is a desired characteristic. 2.6, the repository provides a mechanism to make very large files available to users outside of the normal user interface. In cases where the size of the file becomes unwieldy for the user. So you could perhaps find out a little bit more what's the maximum that's permissible, and whether there is like a frequently asked question that addresses this kind of question. Find out a little bit more whether it allows download outside of the normal user interface. Okay, so yes or no, or I don't know. So this is desired. This is not essential for now. 2.7, in cases where there is restricted access to a resource, the repository facilitates an indirect way to access this resource. Yes, by contacting the author is somewhat similar to what I shared earlier about the request for access. So you could put you don't have, or yes. Okay, so okay. 2.8, in cases where the repository collects sensitive data, it will recommend tools to anonymize them to enable data sharing. So yeah, if you don't have, just put a no here. 2.9, the repository adheres to the most recent version of the W3C. I was just looking up the database and the DSpace pages. So they do have some web pages documentation that say a little bit about how they support these guidelines. So you could put yes if you can find the supporting document. That will lead us to the next section. The reuse. Okay, so reuse 3.1, the repository includes licensing information in the metadata record, which stipulates reuse conditions for the resource. We saw that earlier. Remember the CC BY-NC license that is the default in the NTU Dataverse, the NTU data. And if you have a metadata field, like for example, dc.rights in your paper repository, yeah, that is where you could say a little bit about the license. So it's essential. So do take a look whether your repository has that. 3.2, the landing pages in the repository include metadata required for citation of the resources are in machine readable format. So if I could go back through the repository, so okay, maybe I should close this one. I should maybe open another one. I could do a fresh one and see whether this maybe this one. Okay, so I'll just go to. Let me see whether I can get any. Okay, so whether the metadata, sorry, where was I? Metadata, the landing pages in the repository include metadata required for citation. Yes. So, is it here? Let me just try to open the page. Yeah. So this is the citation, and whether you can download the citation. Okay. So that's the place to check. Are machine readable? If it's downloadable, then if you can ingest it in some other machine readable softwares, asking for XML arrays or bit text, that would be very helpful. So it's a desired characteristic. So you can put yes or no here. 3.3, adopt signposting to support machine access to the resources. This is a desired, so you can put no for now if you don't know, or you can put I don't know. Anyway, this is desired and it's no. It is still not very clear here. I'm not sure whether Masashi, Kathleen, or Iryna might have something to add on about this signposting. Kathleen?
Yeah, signposting it's basically providing links on the landing page so that if a machine comes to your repository, they can find the full text resource. So it's just a standard, it's sort of a splash page in the repository, in the landing page, that provides standardized information. And it's essentially helping repositories become fair, findable, accessible, interoperable, because it means machines are able to find the full text resource. So it's not commonly supported yet in most repository platforms, but we think the next versions of most repository platforms will support signposting.
Okay. Sounds like the next generation repositories.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Wow. Okay. Thanks for sharing that with us. I think no wonder it's in the desired category. So yeah, don't worry too much about that.
And
for
Suni,
now,
it's the time to conclude.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Kazu. So let me just maybe just select maybe no for some of these. Okay, so I'll just go to the next section because we want to focus a little bit about the essential. Whether the repository applies security practices to prevent unauthorized manipulation of resources. So if your repository requires a sign-in to deposit or to edit metadata, I think that helps a lot. So you can put a yes. The 4.2 repository supports revision of the metadata and versioning of the resources by depositor or administrator. Yes, if you have librarians who are helping out with that. And 4.3 essential, the repository performs integrity checks of the resources on a regular basis. So you could put a yes if there are such checks backend. And then next section, 2 essential points. The repository undertakes lightweight review of basic metadata. So if you have library staff who are helping out with that, you could put a yes. 5.2, the repository provides documentation or has a policy outlining what curation processes are applied. In the case for NTU, we do have links to the curator guidelines in our LibGuide from the repository. So we could put a yes there. So that will lead us to section 6, preservation. So whether it has a digital preservation plan that states the duration of time the resources will be managed, etc. this is somewhat similar to the COAR Trust Seal that is asking for something similar. So yeah, you could put a yes or no. And then a checksum, 6.3, essential as well, basic preservation metadata. So it refers to what the repository generates, captures. And 6.4, the agreement between a depositor and repository. That's very important, especially when they first create their account on the platform. You could get them to agree to the terms, and to have those terms published on the website is essential. 6.5, the metadata and the resources in the repository can be copied or migrated to other systems. So that is the how migratable are those records. 6.6, at least one copy of the repository contents is stored in a different location. Yeah, if you have a university IT department that helps you with the backup, that is pretty essential. Whether the repository has a business continuity plan that details the response and procedures in case of natural disasters. Yes, if your IT department has a plan for its university supported platforms, it's good to just make sure that your repository is part of the overall strategy and plan. 6.8 is desired. So collection, preservation metadata, you could put a no, and then that will lead us to sustainability. 7.1, the repository clearly indicates what organization is responsible for its management. So for us, it's the library. 7.2, the repository has a contact point to assist users and at least one staff member with explicit responsibility of managing the services. 7.3, the repository responds to queries within a reasonable time frame. That's the service level agreement, right? 7.4, the repository has a publicly available policy stating what will happen to resources if operations cease. Yeah, it's always good to have to make known the exit plan. 7.5, the repository or organization that manages the repository has a long-term plan for managing and funding the repository. Yes, that is essential. So for section 7, sustainability are all essential points. And that will bring us to the last section, which is the others. Only one essential characteristic. The repository provides public documentation that outlines the scope of resources accepted in the repository. I think that is typically available to tell people what is accepted. The rest is desired, so I'll just skip them and I will finish off the self-assessment here. Send your answer. So okay, so this is what you will see, and you can use the HTML code and put it in your repository if you get a badge. If you don't have the badge, then just click on email the result, get a copy of the result, have a discussion with the relevant colleagues about which are the areas you might want to take a closer look at. Okay, so thanks very much. That's the end of my demo.
Thank you so much, Suni. That was excellent. And thanks a lot for showing examples. It's really helpful. And as you can see, colleagues, the self-assessment tool is really a good one to check whether you set up your repository according to current best practice. There are 2 questions, and I'll read them to you. Vivian is asking, is it possible to display all the questions and answer options in a PDF or Word file to help institutions address the questions and gauge the time needed to address them? Thanks. Maybe it's really a good idea if a tool could also be available as a PDF version. What do you think, Masashi? Is it possible?
As for questions, after you submit the answer, you will get Excel file, which includes all the questions and your answer. You can also get all the questions at the COAR homepage. Maybe Iryna already shared it with you. And as for answer options, no. but you can take the survey whenever you want to. So you can screenshot the answer options. Does it make sense?
Mm-hmm. But I don't know, maybe we can basically copy and paste questions and answers from the self-assessment tool and attach a PDF on the homepage, because maybe it's really helpful for people to get ready. Because as Suni showed, maybe in some cases you need help from other people to get answers, because you might not know all the details. So thanks for bringing it up. We'll see what we can do. And there is also a question from Stella. Is the badge based on self-assessment without third-party verification?
No, no third-party verification because verification is very important, but at the same time, it costs and it takes time. COAR Trust Shield costs a lot and takes time, so we don't want to do that.
And this tool was launched as a tool for you to assess your readiness. So it's really up to you what you do with the results. So it's based on trust, and we believe what you say, and we also understand that if you spend time to answer all these questions, it probably means that you're really interested, and you want to see how you set up your repository. It's trust-based, and it's really up to you what to do with the results. Maybe someone already tried the tool and could share your experiences. Or if you have any other questions, please raise your hand or type them in the chat. I don't see any other questions, so maybe we can move on and talk about a second topic for today. But please, if you remember about something and if you still want to ask a question, write in the chat, or you can also ask it after my talk. So thanks a lot, Masashi and Suni, for developing this tool. It's really useful. I used it for our repository, and it was really helpful. My talk is about good practice advice for managing multilingual and non-English language content in repositories. And it's a new report that was published in the end of last month. COAR set up a task force on supporting multilingualism and non-English content in repositories, because all of us here, I think, speak more than one language and have content in more than one language in our repositories. And we are all struggling how to describe that content in the best way. Do we make content available in local language and describe in local language, or do we also have English translations of some of repository metadata, or do we use English? So all these questions are really important questions to consider in our environments, and we hope this report will provide some answers to you. It's available on COAR website under this URL. I'll drop it in a chat as well, and you will all receive slides that we showed, and as you see, we're also recording, and you will also receive a recording if you want to rewatch this webinar. Recommendations could be seen as a summary, and then there is a link to a PDF version of the report available on Zenoda. There are 8 recommendations for repositories, and I'll explain them in details in a minute. And we also realize that completeness of metadata, on the one hand, depends on you as a repository manager, because you can try to provide as much information, as much descriptions as possible. But then there are also certain limitations of repository platforms that you are using, and we also provided some recommendations to those who are developing repository platforms, DSpace, ePrints, Dataverse, etc., and also platform developers, because we also expect certain actions from them to make it easier for us as repository managers to ensure discoverability, findability, interoperability of content in all the languages. So let's unpack these 8 recommendations. The first one is about declaring the language of the resource at the item level. So for example, if you upload content in English, then you can select language field and add English. And maybe it sounds obvious that you don't need to highlight it in English because everyone understands English, but it's not really, and it's especially useful for harvesting and for machines to understand what is the language of metadata. So please remember to include the language of a record, and it's especially important if content is in another language. Sometimes when repositories are set up using out-of-the-box software without specific customizations, a default setting could be English, and that might be a little bit confusing, especially if you're uploading content which is not in English language. So please check how you set up your repository if possible, and then use this language field when you're uploading a record. Another recommendation is to indicate the language of your metadata record. So for example, if you have a title in your language, and if you also want to add a title in English, it's really good if you could add title in Chinese, for example, and then indicate that this is Chinese, and then similarly, if the title is in English, then you can indicate that it means English or description. And in the report, we provided some examples how you can do this for different repository platforms. If you use DSpace, or if you use ePrints or Dataverse, there are ways how you can do it. So it's a little bit of an extra effort, because then you have to indicate under each metadata field what is the language of this metadata record, but it's really, really useful for aggregators, harvesters, and it's important for improving discoverability of your content. We also recommend to use standard language codes, and those of you who studied this a little bit, you might have heard about a standard which is called ISO 639. And this standard has 3 parts, because it started with language codes that were identified with just 2 letters. For example, it was, for English, it was EN. But then it grew, 3-letter codes were added. So this version 2 and 3 are 3-letter codes. And then in those 3-letter codes, English would be ENG. And similarly for other languages. And our colleague developed this very useful decision tree, which language code to use for which language. So you can start by searching this code database for your language, and then if there is a standard, this 2-letter standard for your language, then use it. If there is a 3-letter standard, then you can also use it. If you are uploading a language that, if you're uploading content in a language that is not included in this list of language codes, if it's very rare language, then you can use the subtag for private language, and you can also add that it's, for example, simplified Chinese, or it's British English or Irish English, or some other subtags, and that's described in bullet point 5. It's not something that you should worry too much as a repository manager, because it really comes with repository setup, but it's good to check how it was set up in your repository, and it's also good to follow some kind of consistency around that. And in our report, we provided some recommendations. For example, if in your repository you have you don't have an aligned approach on that, how you can fix it with some simple tools. Then another recommendation that we have concerns writing scripts. And we believe that it's really important to write metadata in the language and the script writing system in which the record is. And in some cases, if we're speaking about some, I don't know, local languages in Nepal, for example, then they might not even have writing systems, and it's necessary to transliterate. And transliteration is a process where you go by the sound, how this word sounds, and then you write it in, for example, Latin scripts. And if you have to use this transliteration approach, it's really useful to follow a recognized standards. If you have your repository policy, and if you use transliteration a lot, then it's good to have a sentence in your repository policy saying that, for example, in my country, there is a national standard how this transliteration works, and then I would write repository follows national transliteration standards or guidelines from the Library of Congress or something else. But then, of course, if you write in the original alphabet, maybe only those who can read that original alphabet could really understand what the record says. So that's why if we're speaking about authors' names, it's really important to use ORCID because then it will give a name in Latin script, which would be readable for many repository users. And you can also include metadata in English language to make it easier for people to understand what its record says. Then there are recommendations around allowing repository users to browse to access your repository, browse content in the language they speak. And in repositories, this is called multiple interface languages. So for example, we have a colleague from Barcelona, from Spain, and their repository has a homepage in Catalan, in English, and in Spanish. And depending on the browser setting, a user would arrive to a version of repository homepage in the language they set up the browser in, if it's supported. And most of repository softwares support these multiple user interfaces. So it's really a good practice to enable more than one language user interface, if possible, if it exists in your language. Then for personal names, for author names, recommendation is to write those names in the writing system used in the deposited document, and then provide a persistent identifier to make it easier to identify an author, such as ORCID. Keywords are really important for content discovery, and we recommend to use keywords in multiple languages if possible. So for example, you see here a content which is obviously not in English, but they integrated Wikidata keywords. And when I search for climate change, I speak English, I search for climate change in English language, and then it picked up 13 data sets. And as you can see, some of these data sets are not in English, but they are shown even when I use keywords search in English language. It's a good practice to try to integrate standard multilingual controlled vocabularies, because then it would make it easier. But even if you assign keywords or if you copy keywords from a paper, it's at least you'll have the keywords in the language that this paper is written, and if possible also add some keywords in English, for example. That would be useful. And one recommendation that is a cross-cutting recommendation, never mix languages in one metadata record. So if you want to write a keyword in a local language, write it in a field and then add another keyword field for the same keyword in English, for example, because that's really, if in one metadata field you have title in local language and / title in English, it's really confusing for people, and it's very confusing for content harvesters, aggregators, search tools. So use different fields for metadata in different languages. And then the final set of recommendations is really around dealing with translated content. and we recommend acknowledging translators, also identifying links between original version and translated version. There are a lot of discussions about machine translation, and there are repositories that started including machine translated content. For example, if an author wants to disseminate a machine translated version of her paper, then some repositories enable that, but it's really important to indicate in the records that it's not a human translation. It hasn't really been verified. And then Suni mentioned Creative Commons licenses, and there is a recommendation to make content available under Creative Commons attribution license, if possible, because that would encourage more translations. So that was a brief summary, and you can see more details and a lot of examples, a lot of specific repository platforms examples. For example, how would you do it in DSpace, or how would you do it in ePrints, or how would you do it in Dataverse? So we hope it will be useful. And I brought this machine translation topic because there are lots of arguments and discussions, and our recommendation is not to include machine translated content in repositories, but in case you do want to include, then in our report there is an example of disclaimer that could be added, and we also provided some more arguments around that in a blog post that we wrote for COAR website. So I would like to thank my colleagues who were part of this recommendations writing team. It was a very educational and thought-provoking process, and we hope it will be useful for you. And now I'm ready to answer your questions, and I would also like to hear your thoughts, your approaches, maybe how you deal with content which is not in English language in your repositories. Any questions? Any thoughts? Anyone would like to share your experiences? How you make content available in your repositories, which is not in English. So I promised you a link to this report. Let me do that. On this page, you can see summaries, and then also on this page, you can have more information. I'm dropping a link on Zenodo where the full report is available. So then maybe if there are no questions about that.
While waiting the question from the participants, I'd like to ask you one question, and would like to know, so which kind of discussion you had about a machine translation? So this is just about, the content itself, and also you also talk about the machine translation to the metadata itself. It's also their conclusion was not good to do the machine translation in a repository system.
Our discussions around machine translation were on the fact that machine translation is just a tool, and you need some kind of human curation to maybe correct some issues or make sure that the content is relevant. And if machine translation is used for describing content, and we know that some repositories are already using that if they want to include content, for example, if they want to, if they are uploading content in local language and then they want to add some content in English, sometimes they use machine translation to quickly check how this would be in English. Then they would check, they would verify the quality of machine translation, because they just using machine translation for speed. They get results, they see that results are correct, that if they want to write metadata, what they get is really metadata, and then they add it. So it's like human process. But then, and you know that well, Kazu, because your colleagues are working on that, on using machine translation for discovery systems to make it easier to search for content in Japanese using keywords in English. And what your colleagues have developed looks very promising and quite accurate, but we all know that there will always be some bugs if, for example, it's an author name that has a character that could also be read as a staff, for example, or for some other like common word. Then there might be some issues like that in the results. But if this is done with within consensus in the community, if a decision is that it's better to use machine translation because then you can find many more results than not to use it, then I think it could help, but there should be disclaimers saying that this is machine translation. There should be a feedback form next to each of the records that would say, if you noticed an error here, this is how you can report this error. And for example, if it's my name that wasn't correctly transliterated in English, then I can say, please correct my name because the version should be like that. Then I think it would help with discovery. And I'm really I would like to see more integrations of keywords in repositories with Wikidata, because we all know that Wikidata corpus is really big. So of course it would only be about keywords. It's not about author names, or it's not about descriptions. But I think it's a promising direction, and it would be good to see more examples of that.
Thank you so much. So we can't see any additional comments or questions in the chat box.
Yeah, let's maybe move to the second part. And we're recording, but if for some reasons you don't want to be recorded, we can stop the recording, or maybe we just stop the recording now and just have a discussion about
yeah, so now they're off the record, so you can say anything without recording. So of course, including the first the topic about a COAR Community Framework, and also the multilingual the activity. So we are very welcome to get your comments from the audience.